Welcome to Roary's Roundtable, an opportunity to talk the game of football with our pal Roary, presented by University of Michigan Credit Union. My name is Chris Fritching.
Hi, I'm Pat Shiro.
And we're here to talk about what today? What do you want to talk about today, Pat?
Well, if you're giving me the choice to talk about something, we're going to talk about line play. All right, so we're going to talk a little offensive line. That's right, Roary. Offensive linemen. They need some love too, guys.
You said lion play or line play?
Line play, Coach Chris. I know you played quarterback, but there's other people on the field too, right? Offensive linemen, right? They're important. They have feelings too, so we're going to talk about them today.
Gotcha. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that because you're right. They are the ones who got to protect the guys like the quarterbacks and stuff. So I'm sure Roary can do a lot of protecting up front. So we're going to talk about that today. But Roary's been spending a lot of time during this quarantine in the classroom, watching game film, studying the game of football, just in a little bit more depth. And we thought this was the perfect opportunity for Roary to help educate children, parents, and coaches on the basics of the game of football. Let's head to class. Professor Roary, Coach Roary, are you ready? He's got his marker ready. He's ready to go. All right, let's talk about Roary, offensive line play.
So there's 5 guys working together as one. So you got to be pretty smart, right, Roary? But you also, Roary, you got to be a pretty big guy. You got to be strong, right? So you got to make sure you're doing your exercises, you're working out, things like that. And I know you've been doing that as well too. So let's talk today, Roary, about just a few of the basic things that we need to know as offensive linemen. Okay, we kind of highlighted earlier the 5 positions, right, Roary? There's a center right in the middle, and then next to the center, yep, there you go, our 2 guards. Okay, yep, right there, left guard, right guard, and then a left tackle and a right tackle. Okay, so now a few things that we want to talk about. Let's talk about an offensive lineman's stance first, right, Roary? Generally, as an offensive lineman, we're in 2 different types of stances. Can you raise a number of fingers, Roary, for the 2 different types of stance? You have a what type of stance? A 2-point stance, very good, and a 3-point stance, very good. So, Coach Chris, generally, when we're in a 2-point stance, what are we doing?
2-point stance?
Yeah, 2-point stance generally.
That's 2 feet in the ground, so you're probably in what we call pass protection.
Yeah, a lot of times. I don't know, that's not always the case, and sometimes there's ways that we can, we can run plays out of a 2-point stance and so on. But generally, if we're in a 2-point stance, it gives us a little bit more of an opportunity to get into what we call our pass set and our pass block. If we're in a 3-point stance, and again, this isn't always the case, but a lot of times, you can run the ball better and you can come off and fire off the football as an offensive lineman in a 3-point stance. Okay, so when we talk about offensive lineman stance, we say a couple things to help us get into a stance, and we say feet first. We want our feet shoulder width apart. I know you can't see Roary's feet right now. We want our feet shoulder width apart, toes pointed straight ahead. Yep. Okay, feet. Yep. Next thing we want to do is we say squeeze. When we say squeeze, we squeeze our elbows back and stick our chest out nice and proud. It's really important to have a big chest, we call it, all right? We want our chest out nice and proud. The next thing we got to do as an offensive lineman, we've got to be able to bend, all right? So what we say is sink, all right? So we sink down. We get down nice and low and a good bend in our knees, all right, keeping that chest up proud. Yeah, there you go, Roary. Good. All right. And then the last thing we say is down. Okay, Roary? Now, I know this is a little tricky for you, Roary, because you only have 4 fingers on one paw, but we want all 5 fingertips down in the ground. I know, it's tricky. But for you, we would want 4 fingertips down on the ground, but offensive line, you want 5 fingertips down on the ground, okay? Now, a key difference in offensive line 3-point stance and a defensive line 3-point stance is generally as an offensive lineman, you got to remember, we move backwards, we move forwards, we move side, we move to side, right? So laterally. So we got to be in what we call a good balanced stance, all right? Balanced stance, meaning, those guys on the other side of the line playing defense, they're a little bit smarter than we give them credit for sometimes. And we don't want to tip anything off to them. All right, we don't want to tell them that it's a run play if we have too much weight on our hand, and we don't want to tell them it's a pass play if we don't have enough weight on our hand. So it's really important to be balanced. Okay, so those are some key concepts for our stance. The next thing is how do we line up as offensive linemen? Well, it's the center's job, all right, to get everyone set. All right, so the center's the first one to get up to the line of scrimmage, and Roary's got the center highlighted right up there on the screen again. All right, and then his guards get lined up off of the center. Now, this can change from offense to offense, but generally speaking, you want about 1.5 to 2 feet in between yourself and the center. Now, it's important as a guard and a tackle also, our heads, all right, when we're in our three-point stance, can't be out in front of that football. All right, if you are, Roary, what's the problem? You know? Yeah, you're offsides, right? You're lined up in a neutral zone as an offensive lineman, and we don't want that. Okay, so that's a penalty there. So illegal formation. Okay, yeah. So 1.5 to 2 feet between the center and the guard, and then the same thing holds true for our tackles. All right, our tackles want to be about 1.5 to 2 feet between themselves and the guards. All right, that gives us, again, what's that term that we use, Roary, to call that? All right, well, even no gaps. There you go. But the space between ourselves and the teammate next to you, the lineman next to you, is called the splits. All right, we got to make sure we're in a good split. And hopefully your coaches are teaching you up on proper splits. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit, Roary, about front side linemen versus backside linemen and the importance of that. Okay. Now, for the offensive line for the Detroit Lions, all right, let's say we've got a quarterback. Who's our quarterback again, Matt? Matt. I just gave the answer.
Yeah, you gave it away. Yeah.
Just gave it away. All right, you're lucky, Roary. Yeah, number 9, Matthew Stafford. Okay. Now, Matthew Stafford's a right-handed quarterback. So let's say it's a pass play, Roary. Can you show who the backside offensive linemen are that protect Matthew Stafford's backside? Okay, so if Matthew Stafford's throwing the football, these guys are really important, okay, because Matthew Stafford, as good as he is, he doesn't have eyes in the back of his head, and he can't see on his backside. So when he's getting ready to throw, he's really trusting his left tackle and his left guard, whether it be Taylor Decker and, I don't know, Joe Dahl or whoever's going to be playing up front on the offensive line this year. Those guys are really important, okay? Now, the center is kind of like the brains of the offensive line, okay? He kind of gets everyone set up as well, makes all the calls and the adjustments based on what the defense shows you, okay? As an offensive line, one of your first responsibilities is to figure out what do you have in front of you. Okay, what type of defense is lined up? And the center helps get everyone lined up that way. Communication is so important on the offensive line. All right, and it starts right there with that guy, yeah, in the middle, in the center. So, yeah, you got to have your eyes up, Roary. You can't be looking down and looking at the grass. All right, you got to look up and see who's coming. All right, maybe there's somebody blitzing in the A gap or the B gap or the C gap. Okay, you got to be able to look for that. Yeah, we don't want that, right? We got to protect our guys as offensive linemen. All right, and so then our front side, Roary, would be where? Okay, front side. Yeah, now their job is really important too. Although, you know, if it's a pass play, Matthew Stafford has a little bit better job seeing, you know, what's happening in front of him there. But he's not supposed to be worried about those defensive linemen and who's coming. Right? He wants to be looking downfield to see who's open so he can throw the ball. Okay, so those are just a few different fundamentals that we want to think about. Start thinking about when you're practicing on the offensive line. Okay, you want to practice that good balanced stance. Okay, you want to make sure you have your eyes up so that you can see what's happening out in front of you. Okay, and those are key important things to learn before the snap even starts. Okay, so a couple things. Yep, stance. Understand where we line up and our splits. Have a good balanced stance. What else, Rory? Anything else?
He's writing it all out. He knows it.
who's rushing, right? Know that defense. Yep, have a good stance, be good balance in it. Make sure we know where to line up with a good split, and then have our eyes up and looking for that defense, see if we know who's coming. All right, Rory,
Now,
thanks for talking O-line play.
Yeah, Coach Pat, I had a couple questions real quick. You said you 1.5 to 2 feet your splits. Now, are you talking Roary's feet? Because Roary's feet are awfully big.
Yeah, that's a very valid question. And most offensive linemen's feet are pretty big. So I would say, as you get a little bit bigger, maybe those 1.5, 2 feet splits get a little bit bigger naturally, right? But if you think about a ruler, all right, that's generally 1 foot. Okay, so think about having at least 1.5 to 2 rulers in between you and the person next to you if you're playing out in that guard tackle spot.
And the second thing you said, something about the center has all the brains. Now, you played center. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I should say center has a lot of responsibility. Right? I'm not going to say I always knew all the answers, right? But the center does have a lot of responsibility in terms of getting guys in position and knowing what's coming, right? He gets up there, he's looking around, he's got the view, right? He can see both sides of the line, if you will, right? And so if you're playing left tackle, it's hard to see what's happening out on the right side. So the center kind of gets that communication started, right? And it's so loud in those stadiums that you can't even hear yourself think sometimes, right? So the center, has to communicate also to the quarterback, right? There's a lot of communication between the quarterback and the center, Rory, very good. But that center has to make sure that he gets the right call to the guard, and then the guard sometimes has to relay that out to the tackle and to the tight end. So that's really important that it starts there in the middle.
Now, Rory's got a big head. I'm sure there's a lot of brains in there. So that's why he knows this stuff. But he's also sometimes, but he's studying, and that's really neat to see. We really appreciate, Roary, you being able to draw. I had no idea there was this much about the offensive line that you had to learn. I'm sure there's probably more, right?
So much more. We haven't even talked plays or run blocks or pass blocks or any of that stuff yet. I mean, this is simply, stuff that we got to do before the ball is even snapped, right, Rory? So
thanks for being a part of Roary's Roundtable.